Did you know that all experiences in your life are for you? Welcome to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives with me, Dr. Connie. Discover how every experience is an opportunity for spiritual expansion when we observe and use them from the higher perspective of our soul. Explore how we can create more alignment in our lives by focusing on the essence of the experience we want, rather than the form. Learn about ways of living and working together that can build a more harmonious and cooperative world. In each episode, we share awarenesses and tools that you can use in your own soul's journey to create more love, peace, and joy. Soul Musings starts now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives. And we're going to start like we always like to do, just taking a moment to go inside, maybe touch your heart, and imagine the beautiful white or golden light coming from the highest place you can imagine, down through the top of your head, through all the levels of your consciousness, all the cells and systems of the body, and seeing that light just wrap around you, feeling surrounding and protecting you and pushing out anything that you no longer need. And in your perfect timing, just come present into the room. So today we have a great show about higher perspectives on health and healing, and we'll be exploring how health is tied to all levels of our consciousness, and how we can either use those levels of consciousness to understand where the imbalance might be, or how we might use them as a way of exploring our own healing. And just to qualify, this is not medical advice. This is our sharing our own experiences that have led to some success in terms of living a healthy and thriving kind of life. Now, for me, a higher perspective on health and healing is one of the awarenesses is that the body is actually designed to heal itself. And that's not a new wisdom. It's been part of medicine throughout the ages and also alternative healing modalities. It's not always part of modern medical practices, however. There's a theory called terrain theory where disease is produced by toxicity, nutrient deficiency, or mental emotional disturbances, and symptoms can often be just the body clearing itself of toxins. A higher perspective is also realizing that all levels of consciousness, the spiritual, unconscious, mental, emotional, can have an effect on either disease or balance in the body, and that we can intervene on those to contribute to healing. If you saw last month's episode, you might recall that Dr. Angela Bell talked about going into remission when she started on her spiritual path. And today we have a popular guest, Reverend Jack Reed, who is, in addition to being the founder of Community Planet Foundation, is an ordained minister and has had several experiences of using many levels of consciousness to heal or assist in healing of body conditions. So, Jack, we're going to talk a little bit about some of your experiences. And to start off, just to remind people, we've talked a lot about the power of intention on this show. And we have found it is also a core part of healing. Why don't you share with us some of the ways you've used intention and some other methods to work with your own healing of different conditions?
Yeah, one of my earliest experiences was when I was 21 years old. I was very athletic, and in the middle of the basketball season, I had an appendix operation, and while I was in the hospital, they ran a series of tests on me and found out that in addition to taking my appendix out, that I had an enlarged heart. And when I was given this news, I was in the hospital bed, and the cardiologist came, sat on the foot of the bed. Sat in a chair beyond the foot of the bed. And he said to me that you have an enlarged heart and you won't be able to exercise for the rest of your life. And hearing this information, it was like, no, this is not acceptable. Mm. And so I quickly said to him, he said, you look like you're not taking this very seriously. And I said, what do you want me to do? Cry? Now get out.
Wow.
And he got up and left, and I set the intention that what he had said was not what was going to happen. So I did everything I could
Mhm.
to um, to get the myself back into being able to do things physically with no fear or concern.
Mhm.
My heart was good for decades after that.
Well, and just to qualify also, this is not to say never listen to your doctor, but what was going on here is a limitation it seemed he was imposing on you, and you superseded that with the intention to heal. There are many doctors who take a holistic view of healing, and I worked with one who encouraged working on the spiritual levels, and he'd actually trained not only in Western medicine, but functional medicine after he dealt with a chronic illness that allopathic medicine couldn't help. But your mentioning of the word intention, I think, is just key because it reminds me of a story I heard growing up where my dad had been in a car accident, broken his legs several places when he was 19 years old. And they told him as well, they said, "You are never going to walk again." And he had a strong intention. And all the years I knew him, he walked. So even if you don't have, other understanding of different methods of healing, that intention, which to me is spiritual energy, can go a long way in dealing with physical abnormalities. I think it's because attention really lines up all levels of consciousness in the direction of healing. So, any other experiences that really aligned with that for you?
Well, the next major one that happened for me was in January 1973 when I was skiing and I dislocated my shoulder really badly. And it was the worst day of my life. And and when I got to the hospital, the shoulder was sitting about 5 inches above where the top of my shoulder, and it found out later that I'd torn all the nerve connections, and I didn't have a biceps, a triceps, or a forearm. And the only thing I could do is just take my arm up like this because this inside muscle was the only one that was working. And after 3 months, that's all the progress that had been made. And the doctor said that if it hadn't recovered, if the nerves hadn't regenerated in 3 months to those muscles, it wasn't coming back.
Wow.
I knew it was up to me. And I just at the time my then wife was not helping me much either. So there was a temptation to just give up and accept the limitation. But to me, it was I'm not going to go through the rest of my life and not have my left arm
Mm.
to work. So the negative thoughts, when the negative thoughts would swirl around, I imagined my head was an airport and negative thoughts not cleared for landing.
Okay.
And then I'd visualize myself shooting a basketball on the beach, twirling my arms over my head, and doing everything I could, also physically, to do what I could to regenerate the nerves, envisioning regenerating the nerves, and
Mhm.
sure enough, it came totally back.
That's just a great example of using like the imaginational realm, visualizing what you want to happen or experience. It reminds me of something I heard someone say once. Actually, he was a spiritual teacher of mine. It says, always win in your fantasies. And that giving your body a template for what healing would look like and feel like is important, I think, for it to move in that direction. I just experienced a minor way of doing that. I had chronic fatigue for quite a while and low energy, brain fog. And I had to just visualize even what I was going to do if I went into the kitchen to make a meal because it wasn't clear. And that just gave me that template to make it happen. Um, so, what else?
Yeah, along with always winning in your fantasies,
Hmm.
there's also the principle you can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. And that's why I would not let those thoughts land
And
and take hold. But anytime a negative thought started to come in, I just do the visualization again of me having total use of my arm And I must have done that 100 times a day for months.
Hmm.
And then until it eventually came back. Another time is that on my left hand, I broke this little finger on my left hand. I broke it right into the joint. So it would be difficult to have the joint function.
Hmm.
And my hand was in a club, and when it got out of the club, it was it was very slow to heal and get the movement back in my fingers because there was so much scar tissue and in there, and without moving my fingers for about a month or so, it was hard. And then just as it was healing, I rebroke it.
Oh, wow.
The doctor's office the next day, and this was one of the top surgeons in LA.
Mm.
And he looks at the x-ray and he says, well, bad news. And I said, what does that mean? He says, well, it looks like we're going to have to put pins in it again and operate. And knowing how hard it was to recover from the operation that had just happened, I said to him, am I going to be any better off if you operate, put that much more scar tissue in than if I just that if you just put it in the club and um, and let it heal on its own. And he looks at the X-ray again and he says, "Well, I don't think we'll operate." And I thought, "Wow, my question talked this expert out of doing the operation."
Uh-huh.
And then he said, "You'll have about 1,000 movements left in that finger, and then it'll freeze, the joint will freeze into place." And again, it's like, this is not acceptable information. And once he gave up, I knew it was up to me. So I
Mhm.
set the intention, I did the visualizations, and I'd move my right hand like this and pretend like I was doing the same thing with my left hand, even though it was in a club. And and then I created this magic bone gauze that I'd wrap around my finger. I knew what the x-ray looked like, and I'd wrap it around where the break was and uh, have it melt into the bone to heal the bone.
And you're talking about a visualization. You're not talking about an actual gauze, right?
Yeah, yeah, visualization. This was magic gauze.
Hmm.
Um, and 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 then I'd, as I said, I'd move my right hand, pretend I was moving my left hand and with the finger, and um, and I went back to see the doctor later, and he took an X-ray, and he calls all the other doctors to come and look at the X-ray. He says, "Look at this. This is amazing. This guy heals like a baby." I tried to tell the doctor what I was doing, but this information
Was not acceptable.
on him, so
Right.
he couldn't accept it. And sure enough, there was no freezing into place of my little finger.
I
So,
remember being on a trip together where you did something with your ankle that I saw you, I guess, in a wheelchair and then on crutches. What happened with that? Because I think there was something that you did to actually facilitate that process of healing as well.
well, the final thing with my finger was the first time it got cold that winter, the bone started hurting
Hmm.
into the bone, and I was out for a walk, and I just set the intention to that part of me that takes care of my body. And I said, because I remembered old timers would say, "I feel winter's coming on, I feel it in my bones." It was like, this is not acceptable. Let's not do that. And it never happened again.
Okay. That was good news. And so how about the ankle? What was the story on that?
Well, yeah, I dislocated, I didn't dislocate, but I hurt my ankle so bad that I tore all the ligaments and the tendons out of and the only thing I had working was the Achilles.
Hmm.
And and when I went to the doctor the next day, because I'd been on a trip, and I set the intention after my ankle injury the next day. I said, "I walk in 2 days."
Wow.
And so I did everything I could. and with the visualizations was getting in the pool where we were staying and walking in the pool because the buoyancy enabled me to walk. And then I did walk in Jerusalem on the last day, which was my intention. And then the pain came back as we boarded the plane to fly back to Los Angeles. And and the next day I went to see the doctor, and he said, "You've torn all the tendons and ligaments out of my ankle." I said, "Well, how could I have been walking?" And he said, "You couldn't have been walking.
Oh, God.
There's no connection there for you to have been walking."
Right.
So then I just, again, I did everything I could. I set the intention. I imagine I visualized myself running, jumping, because it was my right ankle. I couldn't jump. It was hard to do much with my ankle, but I set the intention, and I walked on the beach in the soft sand a lot, and after a year, and I kept visualizing that I was going to be back to normal in terms of the function of my ankle. And a chiropractor who'd seen me recover from so many things, when I went to see him, he said, when everything was back, he said, "This time I thought that you wouldn't be able to recover from this."
Mm.
I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Because this time the injury was so severe, I didn't even think that you could recover from it."
Well, those are great examples of visualizing an intention, but I know that we've talked about some things where the emotional and mental level either takes part in how some dysfunction takes place or how it can be healed. Let's kind of bottom line that we have so much to cover, and we're really halfway through our show here. So, what are some examples with the mental or emotional level that you worked with?
Well, one thing is that back in 2008, I was having trouble lifting my right arm. I could not lift it over my head. I could not do this. And I looked at Louise Hay's book, which Heal Your Body, which has emotional, mental causes for
Yeah, different illnesses or health issues for sure. Yeah, I'm
and,
aware of that.
and the issue with the shoulder was bearing the burden.
Ah, okay.
And I knew that the burden at the time was about the mortgage on my house
Oh, wow.
being so steep. It was a challenge every month to get the money to pay for it.
Right.
And as soon as I got that rectified, despite all the trips to a couple of different chiropractors who couldn't do anything,
Hmm.
and 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 when I got what the issue was and I solved it, no problem.
Wow, that's kind of amazing. So I thought you shared with me once too that there was something that happens. I know one of your services is going around town picking up recycling. How did that interact with this healing techniques that you use?
Well, this was after the experience that I just described. A couple of years later, I was I when I go around town, because there's such an issue with plastic pollution on the planet.
Yeah.
When I walk around, I pick up all the trash. And at first, when I first started doing that,
Hmm.
there's this judgment about why do people leave their trash all over the place. And I was in I was picking stuff up, but I was also in judgment. And then my shoulder started hurting again, and I had trouble lifting. And I knew what the issue was from the previous experience. It was bearing the burden. And I thought, okay, well, the burden here is as long as I'm in judgment about doing this, about judging other people for the trash they leave around, then I'm not going to be able to pick stuff up. So if I'm going to continue with my service of picking up this trash, I need to let go of the judgment. So I let go of the judgment and had no problem with my shoulder in picking up the trash.
Yeah, I had some experiences with looking at the mental, emotional aspects of healing also when I was getting migraines every day in graduate school. And I just said a prayer. I said, Lord, if there's a way not to live like this, please show me. And all of a sudden, I just ended up finding nutritional acupuncture. I went into therapy to look at what kinds of emotional, mental issues there might be as well. And I realized that a lot of times the migraines would sort of stop me. So I had to take care of myself, be more inside doing my spiritual work, and that I could learn to stop before the pain happened, before my body made me stop, and learn to just take better care of myself. It was a great awareness. So, aside from those mental, emotional things affecting our health or creating issues in our bodies, we can consciously use mental, emotional aspects to heal and be proactive. And one thing I like, there's a quote that I just love. Um, it was also by John Rogers. He says, create a system of self-talking that talks you into greater vitality and health. If you are being a responsible creator, you can say, Father, I really don't know what's going on, but I'm open to suggestion. So similar to my prayer. I ask the Christ consciousness to be with me to help get through this disease that I am manifesting. And if it can be resolved into the light and not through my body, then I choose that. And then there's this affirmation that I use all the time proactively. Divine love floods my consciousness with health, and every cell of my body is filled with light. Just take that in for a minute for anybody who's listening. Another really interesting part of healing I have found is that some of the programs that we have that are creating this are kind of beliefs or maybe unconscious intentions that we may not even want or be aware of. I was aware when I was growing up, my mom had been pregnant with me when my brother had polio and hospitalized, and then he came home. But there was a whole dynamic around that where the one who is sick gets more loving, nurturing, attention, support. And I had to be very aware because I saw that sometimes working as a dynamic that would be an intention against my intention to heal, which would be my intention to get the love and support that somebody that's sick or ailing might get. And being conscious of that really helped dispel that unconscious dynamic. I think you shared with me, Jack, something like that where an unconscious belief was affecting health with a friend of yours. You want to share about that?
Yeah, I had a friend who was dealing with cancer, and there's various theories on what a mental and emotional issues could perpetrate that happening. So I was listening to my friend. He was describing his life, and he got to the point where he said, "My work is killing me."
Wow.
And I said, "Listen to that." And we talked more about that and things that he could do differently. And he changed his life to where his attitude on his work was completely flipped over.
Mm-hmm.
And he delegated to the people in his business to do more of what he had been doing and taking more time with himself and his family. And as a result, his cancer was completely cured.
And sometimes we're going to just move on to the spiritual level because my experiences and what I've seen with some other people also is that often a soul can manifest a situation just for the learning and from the experiences, maybe from past life, either a balancing or a learning that we never got, or just in this present time, how can we use the experience of going through something that's imbalance in the body for the purposes of learning? And sometimes knowing that can assist with keeping a positive attitude, even gratitude for the experience of what the soul's learning is bringing forward. I experienced that, and I dealt with some issues for about 6 years. And I learned, one, to listen to my body. I became aware of an unconscious belief that I had to keep driving myself because I needed to justify my existence and learn to have how much I can let that go. And then also learn to live with the soul qualities of love, joy, abundance when that wasn't what was happening in my life on the physical. It was just learning to live those. And I think you have a very potent story about tell us about your heart valve story, at least bottom line, the learning that you got from that experience of, what was it, 3 heart surgeries?
Yeah, yeah, the 3 heart surgeries with my heart valve, because I was born with with a bicuspid valve instead of a tricuspid aortic valve. And the first two surgeries, which were back to back within 6 days, was such a night. The whole experience and the recovery from that was such a nightmare that I had to have another surgery 8 years later, and this time, because I didn't want another nightmare like the time before, I was asking, what is there to learn here? How did I create this situation for? It's obviously here for my learning and growth. And when I got the answer to that in a very esoteric story, when I got the answer to that, everything fell into place. And the answer was, and how I created it was, no matter what anybody does to you, the only responsible thing to do is to return loving.
Wow, that's powerful.
Againstness, no judgments, just return loving. And it's a very interesting story that I know you'd be fascinated in hearing. I made a recording of it for about 20 minutes, my heart valve story. And if anybody wants to hear that, just go to communityplanet.org and email me, and I'll send you that heart valve story.
Okay. You know, the other thing that you might want to explore, if you guys are willing to look at other levels, guided meditation and tapes. People like Louise Hay have them online, Bernie Siegel. And Bernie Siegel's somebody that did work on an audiobook, Humor and Healing, where he talks about how positive thinking, laughter, love can lead to longer, more productive lives and even contribute to spontaneous remission in terminally ill patients. So I think the other thing I just want to leave you with, everyone, is that it's important also not to identify ourselves with any imbalanced disease, etc., because as souls, we are perfect, and separation from that part can lead to imbalance or disease. Whereas if we're in touch with who we are as a soul, that's when we're connected with our divine energy, which can help us not only keep a positive outlook, but also, maximize any healing that's possible for us. We can learn to live a life of self-love and take care of ourselves. So if you're not healing the way you want, don't use that as a judgment. What you want to do is just keep in that loving awareness that you're perfect as a soul. Again, none of this is medical advice, just sharing your own experiences. Again, you can contact me with any questions or comments at soulmusings.org or Jack at communityplanet.org. Let us know your experience of using the tools we share. And you can contact me at Soul Musings for a free 15-minute consult or to book an appointment. And just now we're going to complete the show again with just centering in that divine essence. Maybe touch your heart. Get in touch with that loving that you are, that light that you are, and then just send that to Spirit, the Holy Spirit, God, whatever is your image of the most potent force in the universe. And then just ask that light and love to be used for the highest good of all concerned, of all humanity. And thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next time. God bless you. You have been listening to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives with me, Dr. Connie. Tune in every second Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific to learn how to use every experience for spiritual expansion and how to create the essence of the experience you want instead of the form. Learn about ways of living and working together that help build a more loving and cooperative world. Visit soulmusings.org to see more about what I offer and to book a 15-minute free consult.